Welcome to Geeks Plus. I am your host for this evening, Spacehawk, and joining me tonight is Cross from the Geeks Plus team and special guests John Barry and Bart Vickers from Studio Far Horizons. These guys are the core team behind the Last Wardens TTRPG. So can each one of you guys introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit more about Studio Far Horizons and the Last Wardens?
John, you want to go, man?
Don't all jump.
Nose goes.
We'll rock, paper, scissors live. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh, man. I'm just going to go.
This is just a podcast now. It's just rock, paper, scissors for the first 10 minutes. So just...
I mean, this is the compelling stuff in all of streaming. Yeah, thanks, guys. Spacehawk Cross, this is awesome. I'm Bart, and yeah, my journey into this whole space started at the ripe old age of 9 years old when I got my first Dungeons and Dragons boxed set. Kind of height of the satanic panic, and just my parents were just completely freaked out. But over the years did a variety of things. And several years back, I had the privilege of heading up marketing for D&D Beyond, and this was kind of the and it was that run up prior to the Wizards of the Coast buyout, and so did that and got to work on obviously a bunch of cool D&D stuff. We actually launched our own licensed game based on Dragon Prince, from the Netflix series called Tales of Xadia. That was really cool. And then I shifted over to Demiplane and, got to work on Pathfinder and the Marvel game and Alien and just a bunch of cool, much more, kind of diverse sorts of things. And then, kind of coming out of that, and obviously, they got picked up by Roll20. Gosh, all of these different games, I feel like there's, a really cool opportunity maybe to approach things a little bit differently, and make a few things of our own. And in that, kind of wild and twisting journey, I actually got to work with John Barry quite a bit. And so as, we were kind of thinking about Studio Far Horizons, perfect person to kind of yin to my yang. So yeah, that's a little bit about kind of where I came from. John, what about you, man?
So my entry point into this wild adventure land was the Dragonlance Chronicles, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, when I was 11. And then from there, I fell into the D&D hole, and with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. That was my first TTRPG, and then it's just kind of been a lifelong affiliation from there. And then professionally, when Bart and I actually got the chance to work together, I was the brand director for an accessories company called Forged Gaming, and that's when Bart and I started working together. And then we truth be told, Bart played in my home D&D game for a little while, and one evening after we were playing, we're sitting on my back patio and talking about things that we both enjoyed and didn't enjoy about and things that we thought we could make better and change. And a few months later, we started Studio Far Horizons. So actually, I guess technically Bart started Studio Far Horizons and then asked me if I wanted to come along. So yeah.
Awesome.
John, it was always part of the plan. It's like crossing my fingers. Please don't say no.
I'm a sucker for a good story, right? So so we got in touch with Amit and Elliot, and we decided that collectively that this was a really cool project and that we all kind of fit well together, and here we are. We're on the verge of the Last Wardens TTRPG.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can you guys tell us a little bit about the system itself? Because I know each, you play different game systems. They're a little bit different. So what, I guess, stands your game out from D&D and other games, the TTRPG genre?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts on that, and John, I imagine you do too. So it was actually kind of an important part of the process early on for a few different reasons. We didn't necessarily want to just like try to reinvent the wheel. So one of the things that we did was really go out there and say, okay, what is kind of the tone and the spirit and those big thematic elements in the Last Wardens, and how do different like game systems that are kind of creator friendly, how do they fit or maybe not fit. And as we looked at them, this thing from Freely, great publisher, called the Year Zero engine. um, it was almost perfect, right? Like not quite perfect, but it was almost perfect. And so like, okay, we feel like we can take this as kind of the foundation and build some things onto it that are very specific and new for the Last Wardens to really lock in the gameplay with the feel. And probably the fun thing about the Year Zero engine is, it really just uses big fistfuls of six-sided dice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so if you're like me and you just love dice, and just like rolling dice is just like, there's just something that's just kind of cool and fun about that. Yeah, you end up with like these big groups of dice, and it's actually a pretty simple system to pick up. And it's also got a lot of risk reward built into how the dice work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really important for the kind of game that the Last Wardens needs. Is how do you kind of ratchet up the tension? How do you kind of bring in ideas of like, what does failure look like, and how do you turn failure into success eventually? So the Year Zero engine we were really excited about. It's used in games like Alien and Blade Runner and Vaesen and some other really cool things. So almost perfect for us, and we were able to do some extensions. So that's kind of how I sort of thought about what is this platform, and kind of what should the core mechanics maybe look like. But John, like, what was your take on that?
So I agree with everything that Bart said. We the Year Zero engine was a great foundation upon which for us to really kind of start playing in the universe of the Last Wardens. And I mean, probably my favorite mechanic that I have really become attached to as a developer and even a game master is this concept of chaos and havoc, and how we are able to ratchet up the tension for players and GMs, and really put the storytelling aspect of the game literally in the fists and the handfuls of the players as they roll dice, and as they get to choose how much they want to risk on success.
Mm-hmm.
and how hard they really want to push the story. And there's no other system that I know of that really lends itself to that kind of stress and that kind of tension.
Yeah.
Without a massive amount of reworking and stuff. So Year Zero was just perfect, I think.
I mean, that's just happening into like part and parcel of what it is to be a TTRPG player.
Yeah.
Speaking as a dungeon master, it's like you always get that moment when you see that glint in your player's eyes of when they're about to do something crazy and about to risk it all or do something stupid. And they're like, okay, let's see what it goes. Yeah, I don't know who that is at my table at all.
It's okay, because I'm the other GM for our channel, and I get it back. So
yes, he does.
Wait, was Bart the only one?
Feels a little attacked right now.
GM too. I'm a forever GM. I never get to play, but I know that Bart gets to play a little bit. Do you guys get to play Hawk and Cross? Or do you guys only GM?
We literally play in each other's games.
Yeah.
Like, we're both like GMing a game on the channel, so we both get to play in each other's games as an actual player. So it's like kind of a nice trade-off.
Yeah, our first campaign just ended in November of this last year. which was Chronicles of Andrasia. It's your typical fantasy setting. All the while, my game has been going for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now.
About a year and a half at this point.
It's called The Book of Astra, which is my own homebrew TTRPG. I use a lot of 5e like mechanics because it's easy, and I'm also very lazy. So I use a lot of those mechanics, but I throw in my own spice in it. So it's a post-apocalyptic set, almost in like kind of like Fallout, Borderlands, that sort of thing. So yes, we've played it in each other's games. So we give each other hell. That's what.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it as something that's built in to like the Last Wardens TTRPG is like that. Like, it's just that automatic thing of like, players are going to want to cause chaos. They're going to want to. There's that little gambling moment where you're like, do I risk it all for the chance for a great reward? And it's like, just the fact that that's an option that's built into the game. It's like, it's a really smart mechanic to utilize. I love it.
Yeah. Let me ask.
That was really, I think.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that was really important to us in developing the game, was just being able to present both, veteran TTRPG players and new TTRPGs players with a really unique experience, And I'm a big fan of D&D. I've played several iterations of D&D over the course of its history, and the mechanics that we've been able to build into the Year Zero engine and the native mechanics to Year Zero engine, you just don't get. It's not the same as what you get in D&D. They are fundamentally different. They're fundamentally different systems and give the GMs and the players fundamentally different games, which I think is great. And there's a ton there's room for that. There's big room. There's a lot of room under the tent. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask this: do you, if you pick up this TTRPG, do you necessarily need to read the comics? I mean, I'm sure it's encouraged. Obviously, encouraged, go read it. But if you don't know, you don't know that this is based off a comic. Like, I'm just a random person. I see this and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Do I need to read the comics to understand the game?
The great thing is you don't. And John, I am going to try to steal your summary of how we kind of think of this genre or this setting. Retro cosmic grindhouse horror.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's it is
a pretty good definition.
Yeah, right. It's like, wow, that's super niche, right? But it's
on a t-shirt perfectly, but
I think it'd be a great t-shirt. But I think it's one of the things that's so cool about how Amit and Elliot are approaching the Last Wardens broadly is that there are lots of ways into this universe, right? Okay. So if you don't happen to live close to a comic shop that's carrying the titles, or if it's all sold out, you've got this opportunity to like go to your local game store and kind of see this cool cover. It's like, whoa, what is that all about? There is something absolutely crazy going on there. And then you kind of pick it up, and the game shares with you kind of the lore of the universe, and so you understand what those big thematic elements are and the things that make the Last Wardens unique. And then absolutely, I expect there will be plenty of people who kind of seek out the comics or the trade paperback or the audio drama coming up, because they came into it through the game. So no previous experience necessary. If you want to relive the scariest decade in the last 100 years, which is the 70s.
Well, prior to this one.
Jury's still out, right? But there's just like the 70s were just such a strange, weird decade, and just really being able to kind of embrace, there are absolutely horror elements, but there's also a little bit of that dark gallows humor in there, and just like it's just a little over the top. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so gross and disgusting, but it's also kind of funny and kind of cool and kind of fun all at the same time. So hopefully it is it's an accessible kind of thing for everybody, and that this definitely brings people into kind of the Last Wardens fandom.
Awesome.
And let's be clear, the most important elements, thematic elements of this game are disco and bell bottoms.
I think that's right.
And chains.
And chainsaws.
Disco, bell bottoms, and chainsaws.
Yeah.
I
That's all you
think you
need.
just got your second T-shirt there.
Yeah.
Disco bell bottoms, chainsaws. There you go. Got 2 T-shirts out of 1 podcast. There we go.
Yeah.
I'm a merchandising guy, so I mean these are already on the list. So it comes to it really. I'm not a designer though, so it really just comes down to Bart to design them. So
Challenge
I'll put that on
accepted.
I'm a wordsmith. So
Oh goodness.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about you guys sitting here. You hooked up with the guys from the Last Wardens. You said, okay, this is awesome. So then you started building these mechanics, and started building this book. What did you choose? Like, how did you really determine what to keep, what to remove? Because I'm sure, like, once you have an idea, you want to throw all this stuff in, and then practically you look at it and you're like, this half of this probably needs to be cut, or it needs to be tweaked. So how do you go about, like, deciding what to remove or keep or tweak?
well, I'll give the fun answer, and I'll let Bart give the serious answer. How about that? So the interesting and unique thing about working with an intellectual property owner or creator, or in this case, pair of creators, is that Bart and I kind of read the comics, and we just presented them with this massive laundry list of stuff. And we're like, yeah, let's do all of this. And then they kind of get the opportunity to say, well, we don't want to do all this because maybe there's some future stuff over here, and so we kind of need you to narrow the focus. And so really the answer is we had all that stuff, and then we didn't have to choose. We were kind of given a little bit of a little bit of left and right limit to operate from.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if that's the fun answer or not, actually.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's one of the reasons why I think kind of working with Amit and Elliot as creators has been a good experience in that anytime you're working with like a pre-existing rule set or a set of mechanics, it's you want to find where there's that really, really strong fit, but you do need to take like a very critical eye and say, okay, here's the full breadth of everything that's sort of in those standard rules. Do we really need all of that? And what are some of those elements that, and it's not so much that it's too much, it's just if it doesn't thematically lock in with what the Last Wardens is all about, then like, okay, we can kind of put that to one side a little bit. There's certainly aspects of in the in 1970s North America, there are big stretches of wilderness, but you're probably getting from point A to point B in a car or a bus or a plane, not on a horse, kind of trying to explore in an uncharted wilderness. So that's a big part of one of the things that the Year Zero engine is really good at. But it just didn't have a lot of place in the universe of the Last Wardens. So we kind of had to take a look at some of that sort of stuff and say, okay, this is the stuff that does make sense. What happens if you get stranded? What happens if your plane crashes? It becomes almost a little bit of that survival element. And then the other side of that was, okay, where are those thematic aspects of the comic and the Last Wardens as an experience that maybe aren't represented? And so that was probably the biggest part, was figuring out what was it that we needed to add, because the Year Zero engine is awesome for games that are gritty and grounded, and it's really kind of like the common person against the uncommon threat. And if you read The Last Wardens, the threat in this universe is absolutely uncommon, but in a lot of ways, so are the heroes or the anti-heroes, right? So we had to kind of think about how do we extend this rule set to accommodate you know, some characters that, you know, they're basically, you know, chaos mutants from before the universe began. And that, you know, that wasn't something that the engine just kind of naturally contributed. So that was where we're like, okay, well, you know, this is a smart way to kind of build on that so that we can give that experience to players and people that want to, you know, it's like, oh, look at that, it's a tentacle, and let's see what we can do with that. So yeah, definitely a lot of fun. But that's kind of how we sort of had to think about what was it that we kind of, you know, put to the side, and what was it that we, you know, we kind of had to double down on.
Awesome.
You know, and I never actually thought about this until just now. I mean, that probably crossed my mind, but like, you know, we're sitting here, Bart and I, and this just kind of dawned on me. Bart and I probably know more about the lore and the universe of the Last Wardens than you guys do, and that leads me, you know, fans of the comic. You know, the first 6 issues are really come at you fast. You know, like there's a lot that happens in those first 6 issues, and by the end of it, you're just kind of like, what just happened? And you know, I think that, you know, for fans of the comic, the TTRPG, oddly enough, will provide a ton of context for what was actually going on in those first 6 issues, and then and beyond, right? So, like,
oh, I can completely confirm that it does. It absolutely does. Like, you guys have got access to so much lore. Like, because me and Elliot sent us the preview of like the TTRPG book just to give us a little look at it, and there's so much information in the first few pages of it that like just that isn't available in the comic. It's like some of the stuff's hinted at by the last couple of issues of that first story arc, but it expands the world so much more. It's insane how vast it is when you get into the TTRPG. You're like, oh no, this is a whole thing. This is this massive world with these massive implications.
Yeah, and the scariest part of it is not the monsters. Like the scariest part of it is just the dispassionate, this kind of the dispassionate, chaotic existence of why all this stuff is happening, like and what causes it. And that's, I mean, for me, that's the big scary part. Is so I don't know, like, I don't want to give too much away, but it was an interesting and unique and really fascinating framework upon which to build a game. I can say that.
That's awesome. So let me ask you guys this, so somebody like myself who created their own TTRPG, and one thing that I struggled with particularly is balancing. So I would throw monsters, and Cross can attest to this. I throw monsters at my heroes, and I'm like, this is either going to be super underpowered or overpowered. I have no idea. So I'm just going to, like, on the fly adjust health and stuff. But how do you guys ensure players of your game that there is balance within character abilities and classes and versus like monsters?
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe say something kind of controversial, maybe not. Like, in a lot of ways, balance is a little bit of a myth.
Yeah.
And just you know, Spacehawk, you mentioned it, like just kind of throwing things at your characters and your players, and just kind of seeing how they react, and adjusting on the fly. Now, you go too far that direction, and it just becomes a chaotic mess, and you know, you end up with weird TPKs, and you know, your players, you know, my mug does say tears of my players, but I don't want that, you know, those, I'd love that to be tears of joy rather than just like, I just lost my favorite character. So you know, the way that characters are created and the way that characters progress in this game is extremely organic. Experience points, for example, they're transactional. So if you've got a new character feature that you've had your eye on, it's like, oh, you know, it'd be really cool if my tentacles could like eat meat and regenerate me. When I do that, you can do things in the game, and as you know, accrue enough experience points, you can, you know, sort of that mutation progresses, and you can do that. But that's not keyed into like a concept of like a level. So that makes that idea of balance very tricky, right? And it can put too much rules versus rulings. It can put too much kind of that rulings burden on a game master or a dungeon master if there's none of that balance there. So part of our approach to that was, and this is chapter 8 in the book, by the way. Part of our approach to that is, first of all, the way that we've designed NPCs, or we call them game master characters, GMCs. They don't necessarily have all of the stats that a player character has, and part of that is to streamline play and take a little bit of that cognitive load off of the game master. So it's like, what's really important here about a monster or a drifter or a mutant or a just a shop clerk, and let's really focus on that. Then another big part of that chapter is this idea of how do you tune one of those creatures up and down, and some very specific kind of tips, tricks, and guidelines to say, hey, if this is just been a total cakewalk for your wardens, here are some things that you can do to kind of incrementally increase the difficulty and the challenge of things. And by the way, if you find that you've gone too far, here's some things that you can do to kind of bring that back down. So it's less of like, oh, you've got a challenge rating of 9, and more of, hey, if your wardens as a group, they've got some stats that kind of look like this. Their abilities kind of maybe fall in this range. Here are some things that you can do to think about, how many actions does your bad guy have every round, right? Action economy is a huge lever for managing challenge. And so, kind of building that into the kind of the monster creation process. And one of the things that's just kind of interesting, I know it's a little spoilery, but it's kind of fun to talk about, is that in the Last Wardens, every monster is unique. Yeah. And so there's an entire kind of mechanism for how do you create these horrifying mutants, and then also try to make sure that they don't just completely wipe the meatpacking plant floor with the people that are supposed to be the heroes here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've had, playing in my games, I had just a quick story. I had this mutated armadillo that we called Armakillos in my game. And one of our characters...
Post-apocalyptic, right?
I'm sorry? Say that again?
Post-apocalyptic?
Oh, yeah. So these mutated armadillos. So they are... One of our characters is like... One of our guys is like, I'm going to fight him. And I'm like... Everybody at the table's like, that is a bad idea. Please don't do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to fight him. And so I'm thinking in my head, as the GM, he's going to die. Because, like, this is a pretty strong... And I didn't mean... And then you guys were still, like... What, Cross? You guys were, like, level 5.
Yeah, we were like level 5. We were still early on. This was
very early.
This was meant to be a threat we ran away from.
Maybe even lower than that.
We fought.
It... Immediately, he got cornered and he kept trying to fight it. Well, this thing took out his health in, 2 hits? And almost completely decimated him. And I was like, well, I think I might need to, maybe rein back some of my monsters. Just a little bit.
That is life of a DM, right?
Yeah.
In that, and life as a player, it's like as a player, you want to do interesting things with your characters, right? And so it's like, oh, can I take this thing down? And I know that, like, the play group that plays in John's campaign, by the way, like, we make awful decisions, regularly, and he's nodding his head, right? But yeah, one of the things that we also do is we're very upfront about, like, the lethality of the game. And you read the comics, and geez, like, every 3 pages somebody's dying, and not like heroically, just like, sorry, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now you're absorbed into this horrible creature. So one of the things that we also talk about in this, how do you kind of tune danger and lethality up and down, is this is one of those games where it's okay to die. And the idea is a couple things. Number one, if you're gonna die, go big,
Yeah.
right? Like it's retro cosmic grindhouse horror. So like your death scene needs to just be cool.
Grenades in hand, ready to
Yeah,
go, charging the monster
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
100%. And then and then the other part of that is, that's in just about every dramatic story, whether it's something on streaming on Netflix or the movies or in a comic, when a character dies, right? Like that is a big dramatic beat, and so we want to kind of help people get comfortable with, you know what, yeah, I am grabbing those grenades and going in, but it's being done in kind of this, it's the sacrifice play, or it's that heroic moment, or maybe it just falls flat and it's like this really tragic thing that happened, right? But it's meaningful, and it affects kind of the team and the direction of the team, and then also you've got a backup character.
Yeah.
So you're the challenging part there for the game master or the DM is, how do you kind of weave that person back in? But yeah, right, like just the people like to take risks, and those risks can be really painful sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So this actually kind of brings to mind one of my favorite aspects of the game, right? So my favorite, yeah, I think it's probably my favorite. So my favorite comic character of all time is Spawn. And it came out at a very, like, Spawn came out at a very influential time in my life, and I really just kind of latched on to the character. And one of my favorite aspects, or one of the most interesting aspects about Spawn for me, and he's not unique to superheroes, but like Spawn specifically, is that anytime Spawn, used his powers or did something big and cool, there was a direct and immediate cost to him, right? Like in a reduction of in a reduction of the power that he'd been granted. And so I really wanted to incorporate something like that, because in this game, one of the cool things is you get to play, potentially you can play a drifter, a mutant, right? And as those players progress, it would be very easy. You were asking about balance. It would be very easy for a mutant character, as they progress and become more powerful, as they make those choices, as they progress, it would be easy for them to become overpowered. And so for me, it was important that there was a pro con, right? Like, so if you decide to take that next step in a mutative evolution, there is going to be some type of negative consequence that you may not want for your character. And so you have to make those, you as the player, make those choices for your character. And maybe you make them, full speed ahead, torpedoes be damned. And there are options for those types of players, right? And there are things that will ultimately transpire that will be big and explosive and crazy. But there also, some of that balance is placed on the shoulders of the players, and how they want to, who is their character and what is the story that they're trying to tell, and do they, are they going for there really is no min-max kind of opportunity in our game, because anytime that you make a choice that's going to make your character more powerful, particularly with the mutants, there is something that you're giving up to counterbalance that. And so we really we were able to, I feel, pretty well able to place some of that burden on through the mechanics of the game that we created, place some of that burden onto the player for balance.
Yeah.
See, I absolutely love that idea of the mechanic, because like the campaign that I was running is a homebrew D&D 5e. That's been my kind of main basis, has been Dungeons and Dragons. And when you get to like those higher levels and you get that further on in the campaign, you get to that point where your characters are essentially god tier. Like these aren't even like, your adventurers are above your average normal people, but like this is like, no, these are like god fighting beings now. Like you're in this other level, and it's like, and don't get me wrong, that can be a really fun thing to play. But I've always loved the idea of a mechanic like that, where it's like, no, to get this advancement in something, you have to sacrifice and you have to make a choice, because it puts something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's those great sacrificial plays that you see in RPGs of like, you have to do this, but what are you willing to give up to get it? Are you willing to pay the cost? Are you willing to do what it takes? And it's like, I always love when that's thrown back on the player, because I'm a big fan of, like, my always main immersion is the story. And stuff like that always helps immerse me into the story and into my character, because it puts the cost on me. So yeah, I love to hear that that's such a driving force in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cross, that's huge, man. And yeah, like that interplay, but mechanics that encourage storytelling and mechanics that encourage that role playing are like when it's done right, it's like, oh, that's a chef's kiss right there, because it's not just about the big fistful of dice. It's about what does this mean, and why is my character doing this, and what is their relationship like with the other people around them, that's driving them towards making some of those choices. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So-
I get to shift the conversation a little bit if I could. Speaking on the story elements of it. Obviously, you guys are coming into creating the Last Wardens. It's an intellectual property. It's owned by me and Elliot. It's the comics already out there. The whole first story arc's out, and that trade's going to be dropping around about the same time the game comes out. But as I'd mentioned, like the TTRPGs, this expansion on that world. This is the first time experiencing the world of the Last Wardens on a much larger scale. How much influence did you guys get to have on that world? Like when you're building these creatures and these monsters and this stuff that people can get involved, like how much was like, this is the Bible from Amit and Ellie of what the world looks like, and how much freedom and creativity did you guys get with that?
There's a quantitative answer, I think, and then there's a more qualitative answer. So they had, and I'll like, so they had a framework for the universe that had some pretty strict rules. Not like game mechanic rules, but like universal physics type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like in the world this can happen, in the world this cannot happen. And I'm being vague because I don't want to give too much away, and I particularly don't want to spoil too much of the comic story for anybody that might not have seen it yet or might not know. But so we had an outline or a framework from which to work, but it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a lot, like so like. It was up to us to create and build some of those bigger thematic game style, game universe mechanics and elements in order to really round out the universe. So from my perspective, I mean, I don't think the question is a loaded question, but it could be perceived that way. Like they had an amazing concept, an amazing idea for a universe, and then basically just said, here, you guys run with it. And so I think that's so we got a good start, but we had a lot of, I feel like we had a lot of freedom, and we were able to take that little nugget and really build it into a rich and meaningful and unique playing universe.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the hallmarks of confident creators, right? I think the more confident creators and the more confident IP holders are more confident and willing to give people that are doing game adaptations and things like that some of that freedom and some of that leeway. So that was great. And then we also wanted to make sure that anything that was happening in the game in nearly any way that the comics and the universe might go in the future, that it would fit and it would mesh and it would align. And kind of given the nature of what happened in kind of the early 70s with the Wardens and the Wardens as like a global kind of force that's very fragmented and separate, and it's kind of every continent kind of has their own approach to it, but it's all like like individual cells, and they don't really communicate, and they talk to each other, and they might get together once in a great while. When something horrible happens to that, even that loose infrastructure in North America, the great thing is that aspect of the universe that Elliot and Amit created um, was perfect for a tabletop role-playing game, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the things that we did was like, okay, well, the core story in that first 6 issue kind of arc happened in a very specific place, and it was a very specific thing. Well, it was the 70s. You didn't have the internet, you didn't have cell phones. People read newspapers, and like the local news, and so it was also very easy for us to say, okay, cool. This idea of the Last Wardens. You've got this group that's doing this thing over in Bleakwood, but then there could be these other little cells all across the continent, and have no idea that the other ones are out there, right?
Mhm.
And then you start to think about, okay, well, what would happen if one of these groups ran into another one of these groups, just kind of thinking that they were the only ones left, or the only ones trying to sort of fight this good fight. So it did give us a lot of room to kind of play, because the story in a lot of ways in that 6 issue arc is very personal and very intimate in some ways, right? And because of that, it made it smooth sailing to kind of say, well, okay, that's happening over here. What might be happening over there?
That's awesome. It's awesome to hear that. I mean, that's a massive shout out to Amit and Elliot for that, for just trusting you guys to run with their world. It's like, because I just thinking of myself and like the homebrew world I created for Chronicles of Andrasia. It's like, once you've started putting a world together and ideas together and things in place, it's like that's your baby. That's your, like, this is my world I control here, and like, and it's like when someone's like tries to influence that, you're like, it's, oh no, wait, I don't know if I like that, I don't know if I want that. So to give you guys that amount of freedom, because like you said, the first story arc in the comics, like, I have no idea where the next story arc goes. I've only read the first one, but the first story arc is like, it literally is Bleakwood. It's this little mountain town in the middle of nowhere that's like pretty much isolated. Like, this monster's trying to wipe it off the map, and it's like, well, if it gets wiped out, who notices? It's like, it's that isolated. You know what I mean? It's like you don't even realize. So there's this whole world to play with, and that's amazing that you guys got to have that much influence in creating the world, and they trusted you guys obviously to create and build a world for that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the Last Wardens world was perfect for a TTRPG world. There's so much fun to be had with that.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. That's absolutely awesome. And it sounds like you guys had a lot of fun with making it as well, and getting to be super creative and putting it together.
That's
It
pretty
has been a really unique and interesting and fun experience. And the world that first of all, you're absolutely right, Cross. Like, it's a very difficult concept for me to wrap my mind around, of creating something so unique and pouring so much creative energy into something, and into an idea, and then giving that to someone else and saying, here, make it something, take this and make it something different, and I trust you to
Yeah,
do that. Like, it's a huge leap for a creative, and I
absolutely.
personally, I feel I'm honored, and it's been a ton of fun, and I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to do it, and working with Amit and Elliot has been awesome. But that initial framework that they had for their universe, it was strict enough, and it was just enough for us to be able to run. and I'm making a little box with my hands, but it isn't a little box. There are just some very strict core physical concepts that they're like, don't break these. Don't the world can't break these rules. And so within that, and within that construct, we were able to just spin out in every direction that we could from there. But always keeping that core in mind and doing our best. And Bart and I ask each other frequently, like, how do you think a Meat and Elliot would feel about this? Or how do you think, how would this fit in the world? I mean, he's laughing. He knows, and we would go back and forth, and we would put each other in those shoes, and that's how we tried to stay true to the just to the nature, the essence of the universe and the story. So of their story, right? Like their universe and their story. So.
Oh, absolutely, and it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal to think of getting given free reign of that sort of stuff. It's like absolutely amazing. But from the sounds of it, and from the little that I've seen of the book, I've only seen a very small preview section of it. It honestly has got me excited and hyped for
same
it.
here.
I cannot wait to get the full book itself. Just for someone like me, I'm very much a lore heavy person. So even just to read the opening bit with the lore into the little bits and pieces that are there, I'm like, okay, this is something I can really sink my teeth into. So it's been phenomenal to get immersed in the Last Wardens world. And I'm super happy that you guys have had the opportunity to do this because it sounds amazing. It really does.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Space.
No. I was just gonna say it looks really awesome, and like I'm excited to check it out for sure.
Yeah, it's and this was something that Cross, something that you mentioned, and then Spacehawk, with kind of your current campaign, and one of the things that we talk about is that there are aspects to the game that if even if you weren't playing the Last Wardens, right, even if you weren't in that universe, there are like big stretches of content and concepts and ideas that you could kind of take out of this and like, okay, well, maybe 70s weren't my thing, and I've got this more like far realms kind of thing going on in my 5e campaign. There's like all kinds of things that you can just kind of pull and lift and adapt. And so my hope is that people have these wonderful kind of ongoing Last Wardens campaigns, and also if they're doing something in other games that they're associated with, they can like, oh well, I can actually maybe take that table or whatever from the Last Wardens book and maybe bring it over and try some of those ideas in a 5e campaign or a Pathfinder campaign or something like that. So yeah, we're hoping that people can get a lot of love out of playing the game, and then maybe even use some of the aspects in some of the other games they play.
Absolutely.
Bart read my mind. So I don't know. You guys might be able to tell. Like, I have a few RPGs.
Just a couple.
One or two.
In my collection. I'm a sucker for. I love. I think you mentioned that you like lore. I love reading TTRPG books. I love the layouts. I love the tables. I love the lore. I love the mechanics. And this we put a lot of stuff in here that I think that can be useful for anyone that's running either a period game or any type of just elements that you could take from this, from just random mutated monster creation to the way that we handle macro travel even. So I think there are going to be a ton of people who really enjoy playing the Last Wardens game, and we've had a ton of fun creating it. But I think it'll be a great addition to any GM or player's collection, just as a point of reference. So, yeah. And a cool piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
before we wrap up, is there anything else that you guys like to let the viewers know?
I mean, I would say I've gotta invite people to go to lastwardensgame.com and kind of check out free preview. And there's we've added some sneak peeks for a few of the spreads and a couple of the some of the final games. So if you've kind of looked through the preview and then kind of looked to some of this new stuff, it's like, oh, these are some things that have evolved and these are some things that have changed, which is great. I just want to thank you guys for having us on. Big shout out to Amit and Elliot for letting us play in their universe, and really excited to see what comes next for things.
Awesome. And when does the book officially come out? What's the official release date for it?
So the target release date for the digital edition is ideally going to coincide with the release of the trade paperback on March 11th. So at the time of this recording, we're talking about like a week or so, right? And then the print editions hitting bookshelves and available direct just a few weeks after that. So we're coming up on it.
Nice.
Awesome.
And I'll add that the print edition comes with an amazing new cover, which you can see on the free preview section of the website. And additionally, the print version of the book will also come with a free digital download of the full PDF of the book as well. So there's going to be a ton of value baked into the print edition.
Awesome.
Well,
we will definitely make sure to include all links down below. So go check these guys out. Go check out The Last Wardens. Go read the comics. Just do it. Just do it. So guys, that is going to wrap it up for us for tonight. Stay safe, stay nerdy, and blee. I can't even talk tonight.
And blee blast.
Blah, blah. And be blessed. We will catch you next time for more. Bye.